everybody. My name is Sarahia Benn. Some of you may recognize me because I ran for state delegate in 2018. Everyone calls me the People's Champ because I support the people. I'm the Legislative Director of OR Baltimore City and County, Executive Director of Policy Foundation of Maryland, prominent environmentalist, political policy consultant, musician, promoter, entrepreneur, statewide activist, and advocate, and host of Beats in Politics podcast. Thank you for supporting Beats in Politics special edition interview, Women in Equality Month edition 14. Yeah, we're going to have a great time. So let's get into it. All right. So guess who we have, boys and girls? Oh, we got a great guest today. And I'm going to tell you something. You guys are really going to enjoy our guest today. She is a candidate in Congressional District 1, Jennifer Pingley. She is a lifelong resident of Congressional District 1. That's really important. You want to know why? Being a candidate in your district is so important because that means you know something about your district. Her family has deep roots there, include working on the conversion of the C&D Canal to free and open waterway 100 years ago. Wow, that's deep. You sound like my family. Jennifer has served her community as a nurse since 2008 alongside volunteer work for her local fire department. Rightly so, Jennifer's platform focuses on health, safety, security, and preserving our legacy for generations to come. And that's really important. That means she supports her community like this here People's Champ. Jennifer's diverse nursing career has given her a wide picture of how healthcare functions in the U.S. She feels our citizens deserve better. Jennifer believes she will be the one to reduce healthcare costs by introducing primary care for all citizens. This fiscally prudent legislation, which Jennifer touts as a benefit of citizens, is backed by common sense data, science, and experience to keep people happier, healthier, and out of the hospital. Jennifer wishes to protect Second Amendment rights. As a certified occupational hearing conservationist, Jennifer plans to take on firearms manufacturers, require them to engineer their noise levels down. Now, you know, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to continue to read her bio. But as a professional musician, that is so important. Your hearing is so important to your life. So we're going to talk maybe a little bit about that. The right to bear arms, she says, quote, should not come at a cost of your hearing, end quote. Jennifer also plans on working with ammunition manufacturers to advance projectile technology, as part of her Get the Lead Out initiative. This initiative removes heavy metals from ammunition to the benefit of workers, manufacturers, and the environment. Jennifer understands the needs for improving and creating sustainable infrastructure, including rural broadband. She recognizes that supporting infrastructure is a necessary step in supporting our farmers, revitalizing our small towns. Jennifer emphasizes that both farming and infrastructure are true national security issues that must not be forgotten. Jennifer sums up her campaign simply yet poignantly. Quote, truthfully, I'm just a normal person trying to solve problems of everyday people here in my district. And I do that best by drawing on my nursing experiences as a constant negotiator and advocate, end quote. So I'd like to introduce, hey, yeah, Miss Jennifer Pingley. Yeah. How you doing?
That's the best introduction I've ever had. I'm honored to be talking to the People's Champ, so thank you very much for having me on today.
Awesome. It's awesome. You know, it's great having you on here, Jennifer. We always like people that champion their community. I love people who are engaged in their everyday people. because it's about everyday people that are going to take back, and I know this sounds crazy because it probably, in this time, that are going to go in and do the work, the people's work in our government. And so I really love what is in your bio, because that's what we need. And so, I mean, we're going to get right into it. And everybody, this is the question everybody wants to know. Why are you running? I mean, I think we got into a little bit of in your bio, but I want to hear it out of your mouth. Why are you running?
I have been advocating at local, state, and congressional levels for a little while, and simply not enough is being done. And I have a very unique perspective, as you've mentioned a little bit there in the bio, where you pointed out a couple of things that kind of stuck out to you. Well, those are the things that stick out to other people too, and things that might not be thought about. Approach when it comes to talking to individuals is a lot, and that's something that I do very well as a nurse, because I don't get to cherry pick my patients. They come in the door and I get whoever's in front of me. My job is to advocate for them, to know what their needs are and represent them to the rest of the healthcare team when the patient can't, or the family can't be there to talk with the healthcare team. And I don't have to agree with it, but I have to do the job of representation. So it's like already being in public service, but being paid by private industry. And that just, to me, leads into what my congressional district needs. Congressman Harris, who currently has the seat, I don't think is doing enough as a healthcare provider to take care of the district, particularly in the way he votes and some of the party rhetoric that he spouts. And I believe that I am the person to be able to take the seat from him and do better as another healthcare provider, being voted in confidence as a healthcare provider. To do that, I had shopped around the concept of primary care for all for a little bit, as part of my advocacy, trying to see, testing what the waters were. And I heard from several different people, why don't you do it? Why don't you get up and run? I briefly talked to Joe Biden, and he's like, well, why don't you do it? Like, wow. Just testing waters, it's okay. This was clearly before he was president, in his period between vice presidency and then coming to be our president. I got two sentences out to Nancy Pelosi and basically got the, well, why don't you do it? And she mentioned it in her speech that night. But it really came down to my dad going, you just really need to get up here and do this. A, because I'm tired of listening to it, and B, because you're the only one who's making sense. And my family, most of them, and my parents in particular, are lifelong Republicans. Oh, wow. And they tell me how it is. There is no question in my family. You are not wearing that out the house. You are not going to say that to that person. This is how you are going to behave. We are very upfront with each other. And I would expect nothing less from my family. So if my father tells me you should be the one doing it, I'm going to take him seriously. Sadly, he passed away. Actually, it was a year ago on August 1st. So still fresh, but I'm done my year of mourning, and it's really reinvigorated me to go back to the plan that my dad and I had for me to take over the seat, and how to do it, because he was my armchair campaign manager. So it's been a lot of little pieces. It's not been one thing, but once you put it all together, you just got to take that step. And when my dad basically shoved me and said, you can do this, and I got out here and I went, oh, that's right, I can. Okay, we're good. You've got to take that step. And I tell anybody who wants to run for office, the only way you're really going to figure it out is to take the step and start preparing, or take the step and go ahead and go to your elections office and sign up. Because if you don't, you'll just be sitting there wondering. And anybody who thinks they can run, that's how you're gonna figure it out.
Wow, Jennifer, we have something in common, because my mom passed. Believe it or well, you don't know, but I'm about to say, my mom passed a few days before I announced, and my stepfather passed 2 weeks before my mom passed, and then 2 weeks after my mom passed, my aunt passed, and then on primary day while I was running, my aunt passed. So I had 4 passings on the year that I was running in 2018, and a lot of people wonder how I was able to do it, but it's just I had a lot of strength in the Almighty. I guess I'm just a very strong person. I don't know. And I think it finally hit me, believe it or not, last year, which is really the weirdest thing. And then I also got really ill from gluten, which is the weirdest thing. But anyway, that's another day. It's not about me. But the thing is, you're right. Mourning is just the hardest thing. But one thing I got from my mom, she was not a very political person. But one thing she did say to me, she said, you could do it. And that's what I get from your dad, is that he said you could do it. Aren't our parents great?
Mhm.
You know,
I think so.
that's just so awesome. That story that you just told me, I feel that power, even though we are not in the same space, I feel that power from what you said in that story about your dad. And God rest his soul, but I feel his power through you. Man, that was just awesome. I mean, I almost want to have a tear. You know, I'm a sentimental person, but I just want to have a tear. And I'm not even joking. And
Well, and I think because of what you just described, you understand how that sense of family, even though they're not physically here,
yeah,
to hold your hand and pat your back through it and whisper, all the confidences in your ear that tell you that you are a capable person, you
yeah,
still feel it. That energy is still with you and it still pushes you forward.
it does. It does. Because the thing is that, when your family tells you that, what kind of person you're going to lead and help people, because I never really imagined that I was going to be doing this, because I've always been a musician. I make people happy, and normally I don't have people really mad at me. When you're in politics, people tend to get mad at you a little bit, especially if you're stepping on, some things in areas that you shouldn't. And maybe, I don't know if you have, and we'll talk about that maybe later. But the thing is that, community can really love you, or they might, it is what it is. And the Congressional One right now, specifically, because I used to, and I don't know if you know this, I used to live in Congressional One. I lived in Jarrettsville. And I was one of 5 Black families that lived in Jarrettsville, because Congressional One is not the most culturally diverse. However, it's getting there. I'm going to tell you something. I remember when Elkton was not the most diverse, and Elkton is becoming
Oh yeah.
amazing. I mean, look at the Cecil County Fair. Did you get a chance to go to it?
I was there all week. I hit all but one day. I was there as a mom, as a candidate, and we actually sponsored a car in the demolition derby. So I was there as a derby sponsor, checking on my car too, which I
Wow.
am proud to say we had a top 4 finish and a top 3 finish. So
Wow, that is awesome. Oh my goodness, I didn't even know they had that. I would have came that day. You should have told me, Jennifer. I would have came. I would have supported you.
there is always next year.
I
And
surely
my
will.
dad was a car guy. So demolition derbies, I know where a lot of them are going on.
Wow, but please tell me, because I'm gonna be honest with you, that's the old school stuff. I grew up in the 70s, so demolition cars was like, that's another thing we connect on. That's like an old school thing. I don't know if you remember like those movies where they had like Smokey and the Bandit. I know that sounds crazy, but they had all the like those movies like that, and the demolition car movies. That was my thing. And so we had to talk off of here, otherwise we talking about this all day. But wow, but that was a great fair, and I miss seeing that kind of stuff in Hartford. We have like a farm fair, which is nice, but I wish we had something more like the Cecil Fair. Maybe that's something maybe we could advocate for maybe in the next coming year. You know what I'm saying here? And maybe if you get to be the nominee, guess what? That's something you could advocate for as well. So that I really enjoyed your answer, hearing why you're running. Clearly you're running in District 1, and clearly you're a nurse, and I believe that you have a lot of attributes that qualify you. But could you tell the public what other things that you think qualify you for that position? Because people want to know, what makes you qualified for this, because everybody always has, it's sort of like a job interview of sorts. So is there any other attributes that you would like to tell the public that qualifies you for this position besides being a nurse? Not, by the way, I think that's enough, by the way.
I will say that I agree with you. This is the weirdest and the longest job interview process you will ever come across. That's my personal opinion. So once you kind of laugh at that, it becomes easier. Before I got into healthcare, I actually worked in operational risk for banking. And then in the banking crisis, I volunteered for a layoff. I wanted to finish my school. So I took a voluntary layoff. And the operational risk I learned has really carried me through, because to be honest, it's about the same. Like, somebody was smart and took all the federal operational banking and then said, oh, how can I apply this elsewhere? Change the terminology. And that's pretty much how we wrote the HIPAA stuff when it comes to privacy. It's nearly word for word when you know them both and line them up. So somebody was really smart when they were writing that, not to have to reinvent the wheel. So that's carried over for me. When I started my career in healthcare, I actually started out thinking I was going to go in pharmacy, and ended up having my son and said, wait a minute, I can't do pharmacy, which goes straight to a doctorate. Like, there's no stopping in between.
Right.
I can't do that. That's beyond my personal capabilities, which also means I do know that I have limits. And I took a look at it and I said, okay, well, what did I want to do with it in pharmacy? And I said, I want to get into research pharmacy. I wanted to participate with people in clinical trials. So for me, it was really that healthcare personal engagement that then led me to taking my pharmacy tech, which I had and was working in a hospital, and then transitioning that into nursing. I decided that I was going to stay in the hospital process for nursing, so I can do everything from pediatrics all the way up to adult ICU. I want to be clear, I have two lovely children. However, delivering them is a completely different specialty that is also beyond my particular scope of practice. So I love all the people who can do that instead of me. I developed a passion for fire prevention. I was an EMT for a little while, volunteered at my firehouse, got a little bit too busy with the nursing stuff and let my EMT lapse. But still being in the firehouse gives me a particular view on how we fund and how we underfund our public safety and public service in those respects. And the firehouse that I volunteer at is actually pretty fiscally responsible. Like, I really, I've sat in on some of their budget meetings and I really can't complain about the way they handle the budget. And that's saying something, because I can usually find something that I really disagree with budget wise. And I think they really do a good job because they have to. Our fire service, our EMS, they run on a shoestring budget. So I have that perspective when it comes to federal funding, which is a lot of the funding that they receive. I got into occupational health kind of as a side project, and it has blossomed into something more for me. I have developed a passion for ears. You mentioned being a musician.
That's
same
right.
concept as music is an industry, entertainment is an industry, and you have similar risks as someone who's in manufacturing. Absolutely. And the problem with hearing is once it goes, I can't give it back
at all.
So yes, and hearing is one of the #1 associated conditions with dementia.
It does.
Not everybody makes that connection. So if I'm protecting your hearing, I'm protecting your ability to function. You know, and it's a disability. Hearing loss is a disability that we don't commonly think of. So for me, that's what kind of has built me up to say, hey, I can look at this differently, and I can see holes in legislation or new legislation I can introduce. It's all about that process improvement mindset with things. The other thing I did is to better myself. I did 2 rounds of the nurse internship in Washington, and hopefully I'll be doing this spring a 3rd round and finally get my gold pin for it. Okay. But that's something where I am still taking on the role as an advocate, but it helps me do better when it comes to how government functions. Each level that you take, each time you go back, you're learning tips, tricks, and different things, and how to see it through the eyes of a nurse. And that's something we don't have a lot of. We actually we'll probably discuss a little bit more about that later. But it's all of that is kind of what builds up as to why I think I'm the best choice, because what we're competing against is a healthcare provider. We're competing against a physician. And to be honest, in the mind's eye, there are only two people who can really go up against a physician.
Mm-hmm.
That's another physician or a nurse, in which case I'm very proud to be at your service for that.
Right. I like that. Go on, Jennifer. Swinging, swinging, swinging. That is awesome. So we're going to get a little bit into the politics of Pingley. And so right now, I have like a few questions. So I noticed you have a few endorsements, and one being Wayne Gilchrist. And now that's an interesting endorsement. And the reason why I say that's an interesting endorsement, you know, this kind of goes along the guidelines that your family had some Republican leanings, and that Wayne Gilchrist was a prior a representative of the district, which is great, but he used to be a Republican, right? And now he's switched to Democrat. Now, I say that personally, any endorsement is a great thing. It's hard to get endorsements when you're running for office, because honestly, a lot of times some people will just give you endorsements, I guess, but to be honest with you, it's really tough to get people to endorse you. And so first thing, how did you get Wayne to endorse you? And how are you using this endorsement to propel your campaign?
So two things. I want to be clear. Wayne endorsed me for the 2020 primary.
Okay.
He actually, and Heather Mizer,
Mm-hmm.
She's forgiven me several times for mispronouncing that, because I just call her Heather. Wayne has decided to, in this particular primary, go ahead and back her. Okay. Now, in the previous one, it's very interesting. I didn't ask for an endorsement from him, and I really don't ask for endorsements. Okay. I kind of put out of a general this time because my campaign manager asked me, and I have some people who've offered, and I'm like, well, we're going to hold off on that. Let's do some other stuff, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah. I actually called Wayne Gilchrist to ask for his help in trying to figure out how a couple of things would work. I'm always trying to improve, like, my primary care for all policy, which is essentially just a different way to roll out Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. It starts with the central tenet of it. And I was looking for an opinion from someone who's been in there of, what do you think about this positioning, that positioning? Had a good discussion with him for about an hour and a half. And then I started about 2 nights later getting these text messages and phone calls telling me that Wayne Gilchrist endorsed me. I'm like, excuse me? Oh, wow. So I called him, and he's like, well, I didn't say the words, but essentially that's what I did. And he's like, well, we can write something up. I'm like, thank you. Wow. It was, he is a school teacher before he got into politics, and it was just connecting, I guess, on that average person type of conversation. And he was like, you know what? I think you can do this. I also happen to think that since Harris, who's a healthcare provider, beat him out, they primaried him, and that's how he lost, that possibly putting his name behind me was also a little poke at Harris, but I'll take it. But it's that type of connection that I'm hoping to continue to bring, because the biggest thing I can do is have conversations with people. It doesn't matter if it's Wayne Gilchrist. It doesn't matter if it's actually Andy Harris, like it was the other day. Right. He was in front of me, and I had somebody who had asked for help from his office. I didn't think there was an issue, but when God puts somebody in front of you and it's like, hey, I need to talk to you about something that's going on, and people kind of look down, and I'm like, look, I will talk to Andy Harris on your behalf. That's how much I'm willing to advocate for what you need. And the truth is, the person that it mattered to most was the person who reached out to both of us for help. Mm-hmm. And we didn't get particularly political. It was more of a function of the office, constituent services thing. And the person was very, very happy that we're getting it solved. That's it. That's it. So I can clearly work with people that I may disagree with on multiple levels. But I'm willing to spend time to talk. And it's that time that's the big difference, and how When you're talking to people, sometimes it's easy to say, well, Wayne Gilchrist last time endorsed me, or to say, well, I had my dad's endorsement and my dad's a lifetime Republican. Does that count?
Right.
But those type of conversations, it's not always about who's endorsed you.
It isn't.
But it's about having the conversations and the time. And if the endorsements come out of it, awesome.
You know what the endorsement you need are the voters. I'm not trying to be mean. It's nice to have these I guess these name people do it, but when it's all said and done, the voters have to endorse you. These so-called name people have so much reach. His reach may be 2 voters, 10, but we don't know. You never know what it turns into. And 9 times out of 10, sometimes it doesn't even resonate. It's always a risk in what you do, but the real endorsement you want are those voters. And that's the ones you want. And that's the key to the whole thing. I always say, otherwise, truth be told, I wouldn't have came so close in 2018. And like you said, you have a base that you're dealing on in 2020. And so, that's your advantage for this race, is that you need to lean off of those to move to your next step, obviously, right? I'm always like, I'm a political consultant, so I'm always consulting, even while interviewing. I'm crazy,
and
right?
I have my notebook and my pen over here, and I'm quietly taking notes for free political consultation, just so you know.
Yeah, you take that, that's your base, and you build on that, because that's your expansion right there. And so that's your best endorsement every day. Those are the people that advocate for you every day. And so, to me, all my signs were stolen in 2018. I didn't have one sign out there, and everybody was like, you're not going to get any votes. And well, look at there, so things are not everything is what everybody thinks they are, as I always say. You keep on grinding, you keep on working hard, you'd be surprised who votes. And that's always what I say. So more politics of Pingley. So you may not be like me. So although you're new to politics, and you're still new, because you only ran one election, you're continue to step in this squared ring. And in this race, it's getting hot and heated. Do you have any political enemies? And how do you deal with those who may not be political enemies now, but do have the possibility of running into political enemies? And what I mean by that is that everything public is lovely. I love this campaign of the decency in one. I love all that. But one thing about politics, it's all that's not seen. It's all that's on the Facebook. The voters never understand all this political scratching that goes on. So how do you deal with your political enemies, Pingley?
Well, probably I don't call them enemies. I don't really think I have any. I call them competitors. I think I just take a different view than other people do. I was actually on a call with, I think it was Wacomico, and I had someone who's like, I'm going to be frank with you, I don't know you, and just started spouting a list of feats that Heather Mazier had accomplished, and I'm like, okay, and yes, I accept that. Yes, okay, I can roll with that. Yes, but it doesn't get me hot under the collar, because everybody's different. We wouldn't be running for this if we didn't think we were good, and clearly, if we're running, other people think we're good at it too. I guess it just comes from being a nurse and dealing with so many personalities. I did have 1 or 2 people insinuate that I don't have the backbone to be in Congress, and at least one person has come out and said it. And I politely told them, well, I'm not so sure that the person you're supporting has, because healthcare is extremely contentious.
You ain't lying.
I'm not only dealing with
Did they see the TV series Nurse Jackie?
Doctors, insurance companies. Yeah.
They see the TV series Nurse Jackie. Nurse Jackie is about as close as it is to nursing. I mean, I know a lot of nurses, man. It's contentious. Nursing is contentious. I'm sorry. Don't get me talking about it.
Well, okay. I love the TV series MASH. All right. So Loretta Swit, who played the head nurse, Hot Lips Houlihan, if you even look back then, it showed how literally she had to negotiate everything from, okay, I'm negotiating from the army, I'm negotiating between the doctors, I got to get the nurses in line, I'm out of supplies, I got to, I got to talk to Klinger about this. It's a constant negotiation that we just get used to doing, and you don't take it personally.
Absolutely.
And you are dealing with some very, very big personalities. I'm not saying that I've dealt with, in particularly Hawkeye Pierce, but there are big personalities you have to deal with, and you just roll with it. You either choose to be sour and take it personally, or, you let somebody blow off their steam. You may even give a little steam back to them if they're being inappropriate. And then you say, okay, can we push that aside? And now what are we going to do about it? And it's just that pushing towards process and improvement, whether it's something for a patient, whether it's something that we're doing in politics. It's always about, okay, you can stand up, you can grandstand, you can do whatever you do, but what are we doing at the meat and potatoes here? Because I'm already at the meat and potatoes part. I need you to get there with me, but I'm here, and I need to get you here. How do I do that with you? And it's that communication back and forth. 90% of politics, if not more than 90%, is communication and the way you communicate with the people you're working with. I'm just used to being that constant negotiator. And like I said before, that doesn't mean I agree with who I'm representing as a nurse or what I'm negotiating out, but it means I'm doing my job about it.
That's correct. You have to be good at it. A lot of people who put on a good smile are not good at negotiating at all. I'm going to tell you, in Harford County, there are a lot of people that are very surprised at several people who, and I'm not going to speak on who it is, got the position, but are given a whole lot of excuses for why they're ineffective in their position. And the thing is that you're not going to always be on the home team. I'm going to just say it that way. In other words, you're not going to always have the home team advantage. You're not going to always have all the leverage. You have to be able to learn how to negotiate when you don't have the home team, when you don't have the leverage, when you have all the chips stacked against you. You've got to be able to know how to do all that. And to me, when someone would say, "Whoa, nurses are used to dealing with like one mask and have to fit it on 400 people and figure that out, right?" You know what I'm saying?
Pretty much.
So that's a very interesting statement. But you have to stand up to that, right? You have to hear that. So you're like, yeah.
Yep.
So when you ran in 2020, you didn't land the nominee position, but that's okay. Sometimes we run and we don't get that position. What do you think you're doing this time, or some of the things you're trying to do to gain that advantage this time? And you don't have to give all, obviously all your strategy. We're just talking about, what things, a couple things that you think that you're going to do this time to get that advantage.
Well, first of all, there are no secrets in my campaign. I'm pretty much an open book. My campaign's an open book. There's nothing, that isn't probably already out there. I haven't already said about it. The previous campaign, I made myself my vote goal, like to tell you how to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to look at 2018 and I want to get between Allison Galbraith and Jesse Colvin. Well, I did that. I did exactly what I wanted to do. And I did it the way my dad and I talked. My dad and I made this entire plan. And that's why I called him my armchair or volunteer campaign advisor, because he was the main person I got to bounce off of. And he was the Republican voice in my campaign. The problem is I did not realize that we were going to have quite the attention we did with the pandemic, keeping most people at home. People were literally given the ballots to their house, which I completely agree with. But the turnout was the best turnout I think we've ever had in a primary in District 1. So while I got my vote goal, and in another year, it may have, in a different cycle year, it may have done better than 20%. It was also a little bit of a red herring in how things go. I will say, though, I essentially self-funded. I am terrible at asking people for money.
Oh, no.
But
You gotta be,
I know, I know.
good. Gotta be a bull.
It comes
Money.
It comes from being a nurse, but I am getting a little better at it. But the one thing that I campaign on is fiscal prudence. I spent a total of $2,500 on my entire campaign last time. That's it.
Now that is prudent.
So, exactly, because like I said before, the biggest thing I can give them is my time. And I literally had, what was it, 12,000 people tell me that they told me in person, they emailed me, or they responded to the poll on my website and said, hey, I'm voting for you. And then I got like an extra 40 in there I didn't know were coming. So that was pretty impressive on $2,500. I don't know that anybody else has done that well on the spin.
No. not
but that's
for that.
something.
Come on now.
That's something I can take over to the Republicans and say, hey, technically I didn't even qualify, because you got to spend $5,000 to technically qualify to be a candidate for certain paperwork things. It's like, but look what I did. And
so
to be honest,
now,
I'm expecting that my number is going to grow.
So now you groundswell some of that money in your cofer. You can turn that into a real thing. I mean, good shoot. I might need you to do my finances. Good Lord.
Well, and I tell people, your money, a lot of people I talk to right now when I'm talking about donations is, what's important to you? Some people are saying, well, I think postcard mailers are the most important. Well, I promise I will take your money and I will put it towards my postcard mailers. Some people are like, you can do whatever you want with it. I'm like, okay. I've had some people in particular who are larger donations who are like, well, what if you don't win? And my answer is, if I don't win, I will give you a proportional refund, and then you can go give that to whatever person you want, because I can do that. And they're not used to people. Look, I'm confident, but just because I'm confident doesn't mean I may get the numbers. But I'm also not unrealistic, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Not everybody has a lot of finances. And if they feel like they might want to back you, but they're a little unsure, the best thing I can do is say, I will offer you a proportional refund if you'd like it at the end of the campaign. I mean, that's what I can do.
You're saying you can get a return on your investment if you, oh, wow.
And then you can go, you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to go put it behind somebody else, go right ahead. I'm completely okay with that. And I think that's a position that most people haven't really seen before. It's if you're with me, you're with me. I don't necessarily need your funds. It would be helpful, but if you're with me, you're with me, and we're going. So
riding this until the wheels fall off.
Yes. The other thing that I had planned with my dad originally is, I love things where you feel like you're getting something back. So even though raffles aren't necessarily considered, the biggest way to get money, I literally just started a raffle for Orioles gear. So I've got track jackets that are fantastic. And then you can also, if you're not interested in one of the track jackets, I put up a pair of tickets to the game against the Texas Rangers. Oh, wow. So, stuff like that we couldn't really do before. Right. That really engages people. Now, I'm going to be at that game, so if the person who wins that would like the opportunity to meet me and have a little conversation while we're there, awesome. Yes. And if they don't, that's okay too. I'll respect that. But right. Those type of things get people engaged, and you feel like you get a little bit of a return on your investment. Right. And that return doesn't always have to be political. No. I also plan on doing something similar with Ravens when we get a little bit more into NFL season. But that's stuff I couldn't do previously to help engage people, simply because we had a pandemic. I had entered the race a little late. I didn't enter until January last time. I've been slowly working my way up this time to really start this August as my go. Mm-hmm. It's about putting the things in place that we had already planned and that we couldn't before. That's really the lesson I've learned, is we had a strong plan. We just didn't plan for a pandemic. And I don't know that nobody did plan normally for a pandemic. I mean, considering I'm a nurse, I probably should have planned for that, but I'm human, I'm fallible. So I didn't plan for a pandemic, though I did kind of see it creeping up a little bit. I didn't know which way it was going to go. But that's really the big thing, is just getting a plan down and working it. And I already had one that was solid. And I noticed working it more just being me. Like my dad always told me, that's why I sponsored the Derby car, because that's me. That's why I talk about hearing protection, talking about how to protect people who shoot firearms, whether they do it for sport, whether they do it for food, or whether they're doing it for their job. That's things that people don't talk about, but that's very much me. And that's how I fit in that little puzzle piece, because District 1 is a giant puzzle piece. That's how I fit into that puzzle piece.
It is a puzzle. It is a puzzle. And I'm wondering, to be honest with you, Jennifer, they're talking about doing a redistrict and a rebrand of Congressional 1, and then it's going to be this Democratic district. And I'm still trying to figure out how that's going to work, because it's just, Maryland in and of itself is like just a weird, they call it the mini America because of the way it just regionally is. Part of, I know a lot of people, there's a lot of theories about Congressional 1, let's just put the rumor out there. It was set up to be given the way it is because there really is no Republican regions. That's probably out there. That's the rumor. But let's also be truthful about it as well. There just isn't no way to get around that little loop on Maryland, right? That boot. Yeah. And there's no close way you can put it. And so the thing is, even in redistricting, there's going to be somebody's going to be attached to it, either Cecil or Hartford or somewhere. They might get a little less of Baltimore County or might go somewhere else, but it's gonna be attached somewhere. And it's just like I don't know what they're gonna do with the redistricting, but I do know this much, a good majority of Cecil is gonna be in it, and some parts of Hartford County is gonna be in it. And that's the thing, is like, people are still like, it's gonna be this major redistricting, and I'm like, I'm just still trying to figure out what it's gonna look like. What do you think it's gonna look like, right? It's gonna look, to be honest, the same.
To be honest, I don't care.
Right.
And it sounds really, really rude to say it that way, but when you work the numbers and when you get the right type of candidate, like I feel that I am, I'm still gonna win in District 1 the way it is. Even if we gerrymander the living daylights out of this district, I scored 20% across the board on all Democrats. That was literally 20%, 20%, 18%, 22%. So literally a solid 20% across the whole thing. So to me, where my voters are, my base are, it doesn't matter what you do to cut it up. I'm still going to have about the same amount of pool to start with. And to be honest, if anything, even if they were to gerrymander it in a way that's more democratic, it benefits me. If they were to gerrymander it in a way that ends up being somehow more concentrated Republican, it still benefits me as the nominee because of my background and just who I am. Wow. So to me, regardless of what it ends up being, it behooves me in either direction for me to be the nominee. Because out of the three of us that are currently from 5 down to 3, I'm the one who can pull most people across as it is. And of course, that's my opinion and the opinion of people who like me and, have voted for me. But we really feel that that's what it is. It's just, even if we cut it back up, we're carving up the same pieces that already have the same results. Right. So it's not like I have, just to say, like, say I had, the Upper Shore, and that's where all of my numbers came from. That would be a different concern. Mine, I was 20% across the board, so I don't really have a concern whether redistricting goes through or not. The way I'm going to run my campaign is going to be the same because I'm still dealing with the same groups of people in the same proportions.
Exactly. Yep. So we're going to go into this next round. It's going to be like a couple words, a phrase. And so when I say it, you just have a brief answer response to it. And it's just, whatever comes to your mind. So you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So the word is strength. Strength.
I associate strength with inner strength more than anything else.
Okay.
Like the strength of you as an individual from the inside, not necessarily the outside.
Okay. Sneaky political enemy. Sneaky political enemy.
Oh my goodness. Spiro Agnew. Sorry.
That's okay.
At the time, he was the best Maryland had to offer, and my, did he have some problems with being that? But yes, Spiro Agnew is what comes to
But
mind.
he was sneaky, wasn't he?
Yep.
Stat quo. Stat quo.
More like status quo.
Sure.
Is that kind of where you're? Oh, kind of like it. Kind of like the "it is what it is," kind of the same. No changes.
Top Maryland activists. Top Maryland activists.
You gotta ask in what? Oh,
Whatever you think.
I'm a huge fan, and this comes from nursing. Melanie Bell in Maryland Nurses Association. To me, I look up to her a lot. So, like I said, comes from nursing, but Dr. Melanie Bell, Maryland Nurses Association.
Okay. That's great. We want to hear different people. That's the whole point of the word association, to hear what you think. And that's awesome. Response to COVID-19 in Maryland. Response.
Larry Hogan. I have to give the man props that he stuck his foot down. He said, this is the way it's going to be. And he didn't let people give him too much business about it. I don't agree with every single thing he did or the way he did it, but it was one of the best responses across the country that we could have hoped for.
Policy that improves equity. Policy that improves equity.
Oh, that comes back to two things. So the For the People and the John Lewis voting. Oh my gosh, John Lewis voting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
HR1.
My goodness.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Yes,
You got
so,
it. You're rolling.
So yeah, that's getting there. That's getting there for me. It's not quite there yet, but that's the next step.
Let's see here. List a Maryland leader. Leader. Maryland leader.
A Maryland leader? I mean, we could go for Peter Franchot right at the top in the comptroller's office.
Okay. And then finally, Maryland podcast.
Maryland podcast. I'm going to go with Beats and Politics.
Yes, you see, you got it right. Oh, awesome. So we're going to get into Pingley's platform. Now, we've talked quite a bit about your platform, to be honest with you, but I want to see if you can do your pitch in 1 minute. Okay. And so I'm going to turn on a clock and so you're going to pitch to the people in 1 minute. You ready? Here it goes. There you go.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Pingley. I'm the nurse that's running for Congress in Maryland's 1st Congressional District. I'm an unusual candidate in that I don't play party politics, even though I happen to be assigned to the Democratic Party. My job is to advocate for you as an individual. So a focus on health, safety, and process improvement for government and reform. What can I do for you? That's my elevator speech.
Wow, that was less than 30 seconds. All right. Boom, 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 boom.
Fast elevators.
There she went.
The trick is to get him talking.
Down goes her opponents. Down goes her opponents. I love it. I love it. So now you have more than a minute. What else would you elaborate on? Because actually I was looking through your website and you actually talk about some really interesting issues like education. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that platform, that portion of your platform. You were talking about like early college credit, excuse me.
Yes.
So want to talk about that a little bit?
So when I was in high school, my senior year, I transferred schools and I was short credits because there were credits that were accepted at one school, but not another. So I had to take college classes. In the state of Maryland, I was allowed to take college classes for half the tuition rate. And I literally, my eyes lit up and I was like, so I'm putting in one amount of effort, but I'm getting credit towards my high school diploma and an associate's degree. That was not a hard decision.
Mhm.
So I selected some of the heavier credit loads to make up the difference because I was going to get my money's worth out of it. And I ended up doing that definitely. I probably have more credits at the local community college than I care to admit, but that was the experience that made me say, this is what really improved me. Now, you can come from any background, you can come with any amount of support, but to be honest, that transition between high school to college is that biggest jump, or in some cases, it's trade school.
Mhm.
And some people, they don't want to do either, and that's okay too. We have wonderful schools of tech that help with that transition to trade school all around the state. My son actually graduated from Cecil Counties with a certificate in, let me get this right, heavy equipment maintenance, heavy industrial maintenance, heavy industrial maintenance. There we go. Took me a minute. But that is an opportunity that gets them closer to where they want to be, and they're getting credit for it in two different areas. So Cecil County, actually up at Elkton High School, and I believe they've now migrated it to other schools already, they're taking students, identifying them early from like middle school and saying, we're going to go ahead and start you in a program. And for some kids, it's completely free. You will be cohorted, you will get your high school diploma, and you will walk out with an associate's degree at the same time. I mean, I'm cutting off 2 years of college education. That's invaluable. So in time and money, we're giving them a huge boost. And I think we should be able to do that everywhere. And with the force that we had to address virtual learning, that expands the possibilities everywhere as to how you can attend the classes or what type of associate's degree or where you can get it from. You're not just necessarily cloistered in your individual county or your individual school anymore. So we have more options to help proliferate that.
Absolutely.
And when we're looking at the cost of education, you know, time and money are two things that cost a lot. And I think that's just a brilliant program. And it's not just the advanced kids. We're talking about average kids who are just driven to do better, or driven to where this program meets something for them where they can achieve. So it's not leaving the middle section of kids out who are quote unquote average.
Right. I mean, that's absolutely great, because the thing about it, one of the biggest things that come as an issue with kids that are going into college is debt. You know, you're cutting that issue out, or at least half out, you know.
Well, and part of your first 2 years is figuring out exactly what you want to do.
Hello.
I went in thinking I wanted to go pre-pharmacy, and I end up going nursing. Yes, their prerequisites cross over a lot, but nursing made me take statistics 5 times.
Oh, no.
Literally took me 5 times. I'm not great at it because I don't get into the fishtail and the this value.
A lot of people
I deal with the simplest
statistics.
Yeah, I needed a lot of hand holding.
I had to help one of my friends get through statistics at, I forget, was it master's degree level? And I'm not even good at it. I don't know how I got her through it. I don't know. I think it was
just called emotional support.
No, I asked help to get through the class, trust me. And I'm not sure how I helped her get through it, because it's not even something that I do. But I think because I could help her more than if I took it for myself. I'm easier at helping people do things. I don't know what it was, but I was just like, why can't you get this? I'm like, what are you talking about? This is hard. And I was like, oh, it's easy. And I was like, yeah, probably if I took it would have been hard.
I will always campaign that a higher math should be able to take that, because I passed calculus with flying colors. So I felt like, because it was a lesser math, I should have been able to. So I will always advocate for that being an adequate switch.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, you find things that are challenging.
Sure.
But you spend some time figuring out exactly where you want to be, and that's expensive. Not everybody can afford to change their major. And if it doesn't really fit them the way they think it will, then they're stuck with the debt trying to figure that out. And those first 2 years, while it's a lot of prerequisites, you start taking things that are going to guide you down those pathways. So I'm a big advocate, at least on the federal level, of getting at least all the junior colleges and the 2-year colleges to be free. And so we can start working that way. But this is a great way that we can kind of start now, something that we can invest in, and something that not only the kids who are going through this program can benefit from, we as a society benefit from it.
Absolutely.
Because we get them into the workforce.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you have to think about investment. I think, people don't understand, you're paying in the back, you're always paying more. You're always paying more. And the key is that some kids are just not even college material. You find out later that it's more of a load, because look what's happening. A large part of our debt is the student debt. It's really what's keeping us not physically, balanced. I also noticed that in some of your policies, you were talking about we talked about gun rights before in terms of the manufacturing hearing. And I'm a gun owner too, by the way. And so we're on point as far as a lot of what you're talking about in terms of the hearing and that. Another thing you were talking about was the infrastructure. I saw that's one of the bills that they're trying to work with. What do you think about what they're currently doing in terms? I mean, President Biden, he had a big price tag with his original bill. I think it was 3 trillion. Now it's down to like less than a trillion. A trillion or around a trillion. Excuse me. How's that going to work? Have you had a chance to look at any of it? Assess impactful, or I haven't had a chance. I'm be honest with you, I really haven't had a chance to thoroughly look through all of the differences. So
I have paged through it a little bit. I haven't had a lot of time to do as much comparison as I would have liked, but what I can tell you is I appreciate his investment in rail. Rail is overlooked, but for literally 200 years, it's been part of the backbone of transport in the United States, connecting literally coast to coast, and our northern border to our southern border. We do move things via train that way. We can't let that break up. We need those types of investment, Amtrak types of investment. So I appreciate that he's going pretty hard with that. That's something that we've been missing for at least 4 years.
Yeah.
I like his overall approach with broadband. We have gaps in not just broadband coverage, but let's even talk about cell phone coverage. If anybody has been on the bridge between Cecil County and Harford County, you're in the passenger seat on the phone, your call has been dropped at some point in time.
Yes, I have.
I mean, there's a spot up on Long Island where the rich people live. And I know this because a friend of mine has family up there and they have beach houses.
Yes. You
literally have to walk up the road, up their driveway and hit the main road. And there is a giant gap in cell service.
Yep.
I'm like, but that's where the rich people live. And they're like, hey, it happens everywhere. I'm like, I know it happens too in the city where we have giant holes in cell phone and Wi-Fi. Like, we shouldn't be having these giant deserts. And I appreciate that he wants to close those. And I do appreciate in particular the cell phone providers who own the equipment are actually being more proactive with trying to find those holes and plug them. Because we got to get that done to be able to get the broadband in there, because some people, their broadband is cell phone based. So they've taken a little bit further step a little earlier, anticipating that this package is going to get passed and it's going to help them. And those are two major things that are going to make the biggest impact. Right. I do like that we're striving for equity. There's a lot of things where money is going out to the states, and then the states are going to be responsible for disbursement and deciding how things are going to be equitably split. We are blessed to live in Maryland, where we have a fantastic fighting force. When it's like, no, their cell phone tower just got replaced here, there is none over here. Where we can really coax people. We have miles of unfinished optical cable. Optical cable, going down to the shore that that we should be able to help fund that with this infrastructure package. So when it comes to those types of things, I'm glad to see that those are generally being preserved. And those are generally ones that we're looking at in particular in District 1 in the state of Maryland to get us back up to where we need. There's also provisions for funding, and I always get this one wrong. Basically, there's like a highway administration fund federally, and it hasn't been funded properly for several years. So I know he's looking to try and fill that back up, because otherwise I could have the Army Corps of Engineers come out and say, hey, this isn't going to fly, but what am I going to do about it if there's no funds to fix it?
That's correct.
You know, and then I'm shutting down roads until we get the funds to fix it. And then, you know, things aren't working with bridges, and I can't get people here. They can't get to work. They have to divert 45 minutes out of their way to get back and forth. And that's just not acceptable in today's age.
It isn't.
While I do think that they could work harder and get more things in this package. I think for right now, for what we have in it and for what I've seen, it is a lean down version, but it's going to get the beginning of the job done in the areas where we had already kind of said proportionally where we would want the money to go. So if you look at the statistics of I want this percentage of the money here, this percentage of the money here, it's kind of shared in that manner currently, as it was in the 3 trillion package.
Right.
So yes and no, I'm kind of happy with it and I'm not happy with it at the same time, but I'm not up there personally negotiating it, so I can't guarantee the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're negotiating with some people that are negotiating on bad faith, because, you know, maglev is a private boutique thing that they're trying to push. And I believe that there's some people that are trying to push that thing. But the problem is that, you know, if you don't fix the rail system, maglev is not a reality. Maglev is boutique, people. And when I say boutique, it's going to be $100 ticket. Okay, it's $100 ticket that no one can afford. One, more importantly, the reason why it exists in other countries is because their rail and their infrastructure is better than ours. That's why it exists. And so just recently, I forget who it was, they did a test and he got busted. You know, he got busted on the test. So, you know, the thing is that because he couldn't even do the proper test underground. You know, so the thing is that it's a nice idea if things were all optimal, but it's not real. You know, right now, if we just improved our infrastructure properly, our current rail would be almost within 10 miles of the time of maglev, you know, in terms of speed, you know, and that's the thing that people don't understand. If we would just improve what we have right now, our bridges, our speedways, our railways, excuse me, you know, our actual roadways, we would be in a much better circumstance. And so that's why it's important to advocate for the current, you know, in this next election, it's important to really, and I know people are very busy, you know, this is why I do this podcast. I know you're very busy, but when I bring on panels, when I bring on these one-on-ones, it is important for you, the public, to listen to what my guests are saying and what I'm breaking down, because I'm giving you the information, my guests are giving you the information so you can understand that this is what's going to be on the line in 2022. Okay. She would be in a position to negotiate deals like this, infrastructure deals like this, that would come to the state level and the local level that would impact these types of packages that would be divvied up. Okay. So that's why it's very important to understand that. So yeah, very good information, Jennifer, that you broke down as well on that.